Greetings, I'm Astor Lemon, bringing you your story as I read it. Now, when many people think of parrots, they picture a foolish little bird that repeats things and just wants a cracker. But in fact, these majestic creatures are very intelligent and quite delicious. This brings us to the first story that I'm going to dramatically read for you, which is the first chapter from A.E. Parker's Clue book series. The first chapter we have here is entitled Who Killed Pitty Pat? In the conservatory, Mrs. White let out a blood-curdling scream. Her hands clutched at the lace collar of her maid's uniform. Her face twisted with terror. "Good heavens!" cried Mr. Boddy, running into the room. "What is it?" She pointed downward. At her feet lay a mass of green feathers. "Oh no!" gasped Mr. Boddy. "Not... Yes, Pitty Pat." Tearfully, Mr. Boddy knelt down to examine the body of his beloved parrot. "The window was closed, Mr. Boddy," Mrs. White stammered. "I guess poor Pitty Pat flew into the window and now he's... Mr. Boddy let out a sob and finished his maid's sentence. "Dead." Oh dear. 1 hour later, all the guests gathered outside the mansion at the Boddy family cemetery. Mr. Boddy stood before a tiny coffin, wringing a wet hanky with both hands. "Dearest Pitty Pat," Mr. Boddy began, "I am burying you alongside my own grave, so that someday I may be with you again." "There, there," said plump Mrs. Peacock, gently patting her host. "Pitty Pat's just flown to the great bird cage in the sky." "No, no," cried Mr. Boddy. "Pitty Pat's dead." Mrs. Peacock looked blue. "Mr. Boddy, don't say dead. It's a bad word. It's rude." Mr. Boddy sniffled. "Now, now," said Colonel Mustard, slapping Boddy's back. "A gentleman must always be brave." Mr. Boddy tried to be brave, but a loud sob escaped him, and another. He ran from the cemetery weeping. "Well, I guess the funeral's over," said Mr. Green coldly. "Poor birdie," added Professor Plum. Miss Scarlet batted her long dark lashes. She ran her dark red nails through the little bit of reddish hair on Plum's head. "Oh, now don't pretend you liked Pitty Pat. None of us did. Why, Mr. Green, you once tried to strangle that bird." "It pecked my ear," Mr. Green protested. His eyes narrowed to the size of poisoned darts. "And what are you suggesting anyway? If you're implying anything, I'll beat you to a pulp." "Threatening a woman?" cried Colonel Mustard. He slapped Green in the face with his glove. "I challenge you to a duel." "A duel? In a cemetery?" Mrs. Peacock trembled with outrage. "Why, that's rude." Mustard turned yellow. "You're right," he said. "Sorry." "It's true what you say, Miss Scarlet," mused Professor Plum. "I wasn't fond of the little creature. It pooped on my book." "It stole my anchovies," added Colonel Mustard. "It ate my red rouge," said Miss Scarlet bitterly. "I never let anyone touch my makeup." "It tried to nest in my feather duster," said Mrs. White. "And it called me a bad word," said Mrs. Peacock with a frown. So none of us liked the bird," began the Colonel. He knelt down and examined the dead bird carefully. "Then we all had a motive for..." "For?" prompted Mr. Green. "For murder," finished the Colonel. "Murder?" Mrs. Peacock looked faint. "Yes, murder. Look at the wound. Someone could have hit Pitty Pat on the head with a blunt instrument. Then the killer could have placed the parrot beneath the closed window to make it look like an accident. "Poppycock," snarled Mr. Green. "Let's bury the thing." "I've made inquiries," said the Colonel, ignoring him. "I know that at the time of the accident, 3 of us had blunt weapons. Professor Plum had the candlestick, you, Mr. Green, had the wrench, and Miss Scarlet had the lead pipe." "Nonsense!" sputtered Mr. Green as he casually tossed the wrench into the bushes. "However," continued the Colonel, "only 2 of us were in the conservatory at all today, and one of those 2 was not Miss Scarlet." "Thank you for clearing my name," said Miss Scarlet, blushing bright red. She leaned over and planted a big loud kiss on the Colonel's cheek. Her lips left their mark in red lipstick. "Yes, well, there's one final clue," stammered the Colonel. "At the time of Pitty Pat's unfortunate demise, I was in the billiard room. I was playing snooker with Mr. Green and Professor Plum." "You were?" said Professor Plum, looking surprised. "Oh, yes, quite right, so you were. It slipped my mind. Well then, I think I know who killed the dirty Bertie. So I leave it to you. Who killed Pitty Pat? Leave your answers in the comments section, and next time, before I start the next chapter, I will reveal the results. That is all I have for today's story. I have been Astor Lemon, going through your story as I read it.